Well, other African nations have struggled to obtain sufficient vaccine supplies. Officials blame production difficulties and vaccine hoarding by high-income countries. But logistical problems also mean jabs often don't reach less populated areas. DW's Jan-Philip Schultz has this report from a remote region in Kenya.
The action finally gets going under the large mango tree, the traditional meeting point in the small village of Uwi in western Kenya. Nurse Harriet and her team hope to vaccinate 200 villagers against COVID-19. Their plan almost fell through. The village is more than an hour from the nearest clinic, and up to the last moment, the team didn't know whether they would get a vehicle for today's vaccination campaign.
At times, when we don't have the vehicle, we normally use motorbikes to go to the interior villages. Because now we really want to go vaccinate them, but then at the same time we don't have the means, so it forces us to use motorbikes. But again, motorbikes are not safe with our vaccine carriers, so that's why sometimes if it's so hard, we just wait for support.
Support that should actually come from the capital Nairobi, 500 kilometers away. Just a few months ago, the biggest problem was that richer countries were not sending enough vaccines. Today, the capital is well stocked, but the government doesn't have a plan to get the vaccines to remote parts of the country. Amnesty International activist Diana Gichengo finds it scandalous that the most vulnerable people are being neglected.
The few people in the middle class who understood why we needed the vaccine took all measures to jump the queue. And that left us falling very, very far behind in terms of focusing on the priority population.
Another problem is that many Kenyans don't want to be vaccinated at all. Conspiracy theories about rich countries wanting to halt population growth in Africa through vaccinations are going viral on social media. Fact-checker Alphonse Shiondu tries to counter online fake news. He's shocked that even politicians are promoting rumours. One especially controversial video features the Minister of Health in neighbouring Tanzania.
So she's addressing on why this is very important for them to use alternative medicines, why we should not trust Western medicine and stuff like that. That was very, very potentially dangerous and very, very misleading in the way it was styled, because she's saying no vaccines in Tanzania, we don't have COVID, take this and you'll be safe from any viral infection.
In the small village of Uwuri, too, just a few villagers are waiting under the mango tree for a jab. Harriet and her team didn't reach their target for today. In the end, they only managed 130 rather than the planned 200 vaccinations. They plan to go out to the villages again tomorrow, if they can get the van.
Sergios Moschos is an associate professor in cellular and molecular sciences at Northumbria University in the UK. Doctor, a very warm welcome back to DW News, because we spoke a year ago, actually, about COVID-19, and it is still very much here. What role do you think vaccine inequality played in the spread of this new variant, Omicron?
I think it's quite clear that the absence of vaccination in developing nations allowed the emergence of new variants. And we got the warning shot with Delta, in that a variant that was highly transmissible basically was able to develop itself in India. And now, not a year on, actually, about 9 months on, we have a new variant that is sort of Delta plus, Omicron variant, which has much higher apparent transmissibility than Delta, and it has the capacity to lead to an overwhelming of healthcare systems in the developed world. Now, if we had done what the virology and vaccinology community had asked, which was to equitably distribute vaccines worldwide and to sustain the mitigation measures so that we do not get transmission anywhere in the world, then we would be very unlikely to be seeing this situation right now. Unfortunately, here we are. We have now this Omicron variant, It transmits a lot. It's likely going to lead to a lot of cases. Hopefully will not lead us to a position where we will need another lockdown. But we can't say right now, because if you've got too many cases, then you will have too many people who need hospitalization. And if you don't have a vaccine to boost your capacity to be protected and not become diseased, then your chances of ending up in hospital are going to be much higher.
Now, the world panicked, and as a result, blanket travel bans were introduced. As a scientist, do you think travel bans like that are the right tool?
Right at the beginning of an outbreak, where you have a handful of people of a disease that can be potentially contained very quickly, for example, by locking down Wuhan, at the time it nearly happened, it might work. But when you have already a variant that's transmitting in the community, as has been demonstrated in the UK, and as I'm sure the rest of Europe will demonstrate soon, as the United States are practically demonstrating already, it's pointless. It's literally pointless to try and prevent reintroductions of these variants. This would work if we implemented a lockdown in the countries where Omicron is already present and we implemented a border control. But at this point in time, when we're not prepared to lock down the economy and communities and societies, the border controls are futile.
Doctor, people are very excited about the developments of antivirals. There are a few in the pipeline and some are awaiting emergency approval. Will they be the tool out of this pandemic?
I just want to urge a little bit of caution to this. It all depends on how quickly you are diagnosed from the point where you show symptoms. Typically, with antivirals, especially for these kind of diseases, you want this to be administered as quickly as possible after symptoms show, the same day, if at all possible. Now, if you fail a lateral flow test and you do an RT-PCR test, typically it's 24 to 48 hours before you get the result. So those of us who are conscious of our health are better off getting tested as quickly as possible when we have a new set of symptoms and get that result as quickly as possible if we want to choose the antiviral pathway for treatment. But frankly, there are vaccines out there available to prevent you from becoming diseased in the first place and having 10 days, 14 days worth of your life affected as a minimum. If you get long COVID, it could be months or potentially even more than a year before you could get full recovery.
Doctor, final thought. I just have a couple of seconds left. We're at the cusp of 2022. Are we in it for the long haul? Is this a marathon?
I'm afraid so. The virus is in animals, in many different wild animals, and it will remain there. So we need to make use of the tools that we have to the best of our capacity. And I know the dispatch you had just previously talked about misinformation in Africa and use of magic potions to solve all virology problems. That thing doesn't exist. But what we can say for sure is that the way we solved the Ebola pandemic in Africa was through education. Now, we did it once in Africa. We can do it again in our countries, and we can do it again in Africa because we need to move on and get our economy back onto the right footing.
All right, Dr. Stergios Simoshos, Associate Professor in Cellular and Molecular Sciences at Northumbria University in the United Kingdom. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.